From training to performing, join our big league conversation. Welcome to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast with your host, Eric Cressey.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Cressey, and we are excited to get episode 13 rolling here with a great guest. Before we do, though, I want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by VersaClimber. I'm a huge fan of this as a conditioning option. In fact, it's my favorite conditioning option, and I do it every Sunday myself. What's great about the VersaClimber is its climbing pattern that's contralateral, which is our human gait motion. So it's how we crawl and how we walk. And while we climb in this pattern, it reinforces a better moving pattern while we work against gravity. I love it because it's low impact, builds a strong core while connecting the upper body and the lower body. And you can really train just about any energy system in that safe, non-impact environment. So VersaClimber has become a mainstay for our work, both with our general population clients as well as our athletes. And we're excited to announce that they've actually set up a great discount for us. If you go to versaclimber.com/Cressey, you can get 10% off on your purchase. Again, that's versaclimber.com/Cressey, versaclimber.com/CRESSEY. I definitely encourage you to check this out because it's something that is one of those things that I really consider almost like a mandatory part of just about every program that I write for myself. And it's funny, we actually had a VersaClimber at our Massachusetts facility that I fell in love with, and I went back to Florida. We didn't have one at the Florida facility, and I missed it so much that I made sure that we put in an order for a new one. So definitely a game changer, and I encourage you to pick one up at this great price. With that said, today's guest is a pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals. He's a native of Jupiter, Florida, and was drafted by the Padres in the 7th round out of Nova Southeastern in 2009. He made his major league debut in 2012 and spent 2013 in AAA before he was traded to the Pirates and then immediately on to the Rangers, where he was transitioned into being a starter. After the 2014 season, he was granted his release by the Rangers so that he could go to pitch in Japan for the Giants. He compiled a 31-13 record with a 2.18 ERA and 62 starts overseas. In the offseason of 2007 to 2018, he returned on a 2-year deal for the Cardinals and quickly established himself as one of the best starting pitchers in Major League Baseball. In the 2018 season, he became an all-star behind an 18-4 record with a 2.83 ERA. He walked only 29 batters in just over 200 innings over 32 starts. He finished 6th in the NL Cy Young voting, and this past offseason, the Cardinals signed him to a 4-year extension. He's also the father of 3 kids, including, like myself, twins, so we share that in common. He's a fishing buddy of mine and has been a CSP athlete since 2015 as well. We're excited to welcome to the show Miles Mikolas. All right, welcome to the show, Miles.
How's it going?
Very good. Thanks for coming on. This is going to be a lot of fun. I said it in the intro that you're the father of 3 kids, including twins, so we have a lot in common. And yeah. I was already a big Mikolas fan before the twins came, but now you're on like an extra pedestal with the likes of Joe Mauer and Buster Posey and Roger Federer. So I guarantee you that after surviving premature twins, that there is no question I'm going to throw at you that's actually going to be a challenge for you.
So, yeah, after something like that, and after being that busy all the time, it's not a whole lot that you bat your eyes at.
Yeah, and you're currently doing this interview from a hotel room on the road during the season, which, as a father of twins, that quiet is pretty glorious, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I miss my family dearly, but I take this time to try to be real productive on the road. Taking care of anything I can take care of online, phone calls, getting things settled. Anything I can do to be productive while also relaxing just a little bit.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to get right to it. And I've already done your introduction, and one of the things that we talked about was that you were drafted out of Nova Southeastern, so it was a Division II powerhouse. That was a roster that kicked out, J.D. Martinez, Mike Fiers. So there were, 3 big leaguers on that roster. But every kid in America dreams of going to like a big time Division I program, whether it's Texas or Vanderbilt or UCLA or whatever it is, and you stayed close to home and went Division II. What led to that decision, and how differentiated was that experience compared to some of your friends who went Division I?
For me, the decision was, kind of necessity. I wasn't, I was a good high school baseball player. I wasn't really a standout. I didn't have too many standout tools. I was tall and lanky, but didn't throw real hard. I had some offers to walk on at a JUCO here or there, or I had another D2 offer for Flagler College up in St. Augustine, but really not a whole lot of Division One offers. I mean, kids out of South Florida that throw 83, 84 aren't jumping off the map at anybody really. So it's kind of one of my only decisions, and I thought staying where it's warm, close to the beach, I could still fish. I thought that was a good choice for me.
Absolutely. How big were you when you finished up high school versus when you were drafted?
I would say I was about 6'3", 205 my senior year of high school, and by the time I was drafted, I was 6'4" and a half, 220.
There you go. So that made a difference for you. Like velocity wise, you were 83, 84 when you left high school. Where were you, when draft time rolls around?
90, 94.
There you go. So
I think a lot of it was, I think a lot, I was not big into leg strength in high school. Everybody just wants to kind of bench press and stuff. But I took lifting a little more seriously, legs. And I think I hit my growth spurt in like my junior year of high school. So I was still pretty awkward, like my senior year and even into my freshman year. I think a lot of it was just strength and body awareness.
Absolutely. In Division two, it doesn't matter. It's just the number. Development can happen anywhere, whether it's junior colleges or any of those. So, with that said, what's interesting about you too is, you were drafted in 2009. You made your major league debut with the Padres in 2012, and you threw pretty well, with good numbers out of the pen. And then 2013 rolls around, you kind of got a little cup of coffee. It looks like you were a little bit of an injury later in the year, and then we're only called up the last few days in September. So, I guess my question for you is, going to the big leagues in 3 years as a college draft that's a quick ascension, to the show. But what kept you from being that regular big leaguer, and what led to them, DFAing / trading you at the end of that 2013 season?
I think a lot of it was consistency. I think one of the things I always think that they want at the major league level is they want to know what they're going to get. Mm-hmm. They don't want a guy that's going to go out there, is he going to be good today or is it going to hit the fan? They'd rather know that they're going to get average results than the guy's going to be lights out or he's going to give up 10 runs. Mm-hmm. So I think for me that was a consistency, and there were some things wrong in my delivery that I think caused, spikes and dips in velocity. If my timing was off just a little bit, 2012, 2013, out of the bullpen, any, days where I'd be anywhere between, 90, 93 might be all I have. And then, a couple days later, it might be, 6, 7, 8. So it was, frustrating for me and probably for the organization as well to not know, what they were going to get when I came out of the bullpen.
Absolutely.
And my command was getting a little erratic at that point.
Mm-hmm. And then in 2014, that offseason, you were traded, I didn't realize, to Pittsburgh for a couple weeks, and then they moved you on to Texas. You started a transition from relieving to starting. So you did a little bit of both in 2014, but really probably halfway through the season, you were a full-time starter, and started to really surge in that regard. What were some of the biggest adjustments that you felt like you had to make between relieving and starting, and how did it shift your routine around?
It was kind of a weird thing. I went a couple innings. I want to say 3 innings. We had like a rain delay restart the next day, and they're like, "Hey, you're just gonna, we're up by a couple runs. They're like, hey, if you can finish the game, finish the game." So I ended up throwing like 3 innings. I started getting my command back through 3 innings, and then we had someone get hurt, and they're like, "Oh, you threw 3 innings, a couple days ago. How about we'll give you like 50, 60 pitches because they needed a spot starter." So I ended up going, 5 innings on limited pitches. And the organization was like, do you want to start? And I said, yeah, of course, because the guy who misses the rotation in spring training goes to the bullpen, and the guy who's in the bullpen in spring training misses the bullpen goes to AAA. So I thought I was setting myself up for, at least having a spot somewhere. Mm-hmm. But I think the big thing for me was I added a slider that year.
Mm-hmm.
It was something I added at the end of 2013. Then I started throwing the slider, and it gave me a shorter breaking ball to throw in fastball counts.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was fastball and then a big curveball, which it's a big curveball. It does pop out of my hand, and hitters can see it. So if I'm not throwing it for a strike, on a fastball count, it's something that they can. I feel like it's easier for them to lay off of.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if they're not being, if they're not in swing mode, ball one, ball two, they see the hump right out of the hand and they're like, it's break ball. I'm not going to swing at it. So if I don't land it, it's a ball. But the slider gave me something to be able to throw for a strike late in the count. And it's a harder breaking ball. I feel like a harder breaking ball makes a hitter make up their mind sooner. They don't have time to it's up, it's going to break away. It's like, it comes out of the hand pretty flat and it's firm. And it's like, all right, am I going to swing or not swing? They have to make up their mind pretty quick. And I also never threw much of a changeup. So, having 3 pitches, fastball, curveball, slider, allowed me to start and kind of try to work on that changeup, which I'm still working on.
Absolutely. And I think people overlook the fact that you get on a 5-day rotation. There's just 4 days in the middle where you have an opportunity to test things out and catch play. I had conversations with Blake Trinan about where his cutter came from. It was really just playing catch over the course of time and refining it to the point that it came about in game. He was able to do it as a reliever, but a lot of guys can't do that because there's just their arms dragging. They're just focused on being ready that night.
It's tough.
How has your your routine on that 5-day changed since you first came up? Did you struggle with bouncing back between starts, or had the reliever history kind of helped you to build that work capacity? Were you able to bounce back quick?
I think my overall fitness level, my fitness history, I think helps me stay pretty good and bounce back. I mean, I'm a guy who likes to be in the gym. I don't shy away from running. I like to power shag. I'm from South Florida, so the heat doesn't bother me in the summer. Really active guy. 3 kids at home. I'm not a couch potato. Good, aerobic, base to kind of keep my body going and the strength and everything. So, I think that helps. I think my routine has changed with how I think training in general changes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So 2014, the season ends, and you take a leap of faith and you make the move to Japan. So I don't think a lot of people realize that when you made that move, like you were 26 and you were in the big leagues. Most people 26 in the big leagues, it's like, all right, I'm just going to bust my butt. I'm going to get my 10 years and get pension. And you took a big gamble by leaving when you had kind of started to establish yourself. You were kind of a 5th starter in Texas that year.
Mm-hmm.
What went into the decision to go to Japan? How did you wind up there?
I mean, there was so many different moving parts and things there. I mean, one of them was, I was the 5th starter on a Texas team where they must have set the record to that point for injuries. I mean, everybody was injured, everybody was hurt. So I was the 5th starter. You had a couple starters coming back. At that point, they were still kind of the Texas Rangers. That was like their first down year. They went out and got Cole Hamels that winter. Like, I knew that they were going to go out and sign at least 1 or 2 free agent pitchers, and that was going to leave me as, the long guy in the bullpen or minor league depth. Barring an incredible spring, and, a lot of players know that if you're not a guy who's kind of penciled in there at the beginning of spring, it's really hard to, there's guys every year that throw, don't give up any hits in spring, and they end up going to AAA because, they just went out and got a few guys for the rotation, or so and so was their first pick a couple years ago, and there's not a lot you can do. So and this was a chance for me to make some guaranteed money. I just got married, want to start a family. I didn't want to be the guy who passed up $1 million and then all of a sudden was out of a job or, in the minor leagues for the next couple of years. So, to get a good chunk of money kind of right away, pay off the house. Hey, in the worst case scenario, if baseball doesn't work out, at least our house is paid for. Mm-hmm. And, my wife and I could go get, regular jobs or something like that.
Absolutely. So something interesting. We first met up in the fall of 2014. You went to Japan after that season. So we started up in the fall of 2015. And I can remember talking with you when we first chatted, you were talking about your arm action, and it used to have that kind of hitch in it. And then really the 2015-16 offseason, you had a little kind of like cranky shoulder, would get sore between starts and not bounce back.
Mm-hmm.
It was partially because that arm action was kind of hitchy. It was very deep. I know that 15-16 offseason before you headed back to Japan was when you started to change some of those things around. Walk us through kind of like what you dealt with it, both in terms of what the arm action led to in the soreness, but also in inconsistency with the pitches, and then what you did to kind of reshape it and make it better.
Yeah, little hitchy. My right arm would drag, and something that I got away with because of my base of strength. I was strong enough and quick enough to kind of rip it over at the last second. But when you're flying open and doing everything you can to pull your arm through so it doesn't fall off back there, a lot of chest, pec, and ended up being like my bicep that kind of flared everything up. That bicep and rotator cuff, just everything was trying so hard to pick up the slack because it was it's probably a pretty inefficient movement pattern, which I think also cost me some velocity. It cost me some movement, cost me consistency of strikes. I mean, if my head's flying out to the side and I'm trying to locate and see my target, and that's inconsistent. How much do I have to yank my head?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm yanking my neck, and you've got your your scalenes and everything. Just it put a lot of stress on everything unnecessarily. There's enough stress in throwing a baseball, and to add stress to that is never a good idea.
Yeah, I think people. I always joke that you might be like the most effortless, like 97 to 99 when you're going good in baseball. It looks like the ball's coming out really easy, but it wasn't always like that. There was a lot more. There was a lot more range of motion to control in the past. So it's definitely cleaned up a lot. So that leads to kind of the discussion of 3 years in Japan. In the third year, you led the league in innings and strikeouts. What are the things that you learned in Japan, and how did it make you better?
I mean, I learned a lot in Japan, a lot from observing, a little bit from their mindset. Just when you put yourself in a situation where it's so different from what you're used to, you're forced to adapt. At the very least, you're forced to adapt just enough, to be successful. I think not just the physical adjustments, but mental adjustments. I mean, when I went over there, a lot of guys go over there, angry and upset, like, oh, I want to be in the major leagues. I'm not a Japanese baseball player. I'm a major league baseball player. And that wasn't my attitude. I said, hey, I'm in the Nippon Professional Baseball League. I'm going to be the best Nippon professional baseball player that I can be.
Mm-hmm.
So you adjust to that game a little bit. They throw a lot of they're, a lot like here now, a lot more break. When I got over there, when I was in Japan, you see a lot more breaking balls for strikes, which you're starting to see here more because guys are starting to just want to tee off on fastballs. So really honing in my breaking ball command was huge over there. It's not that every fastball gets knocked out of the park, but every fastball was a single. And also, you start missing with fastballs and giving up singles, you're going to start giving up runs. So adjusting to the game over there, one of the coaches there said some neat things to me once. He came in. I struggled my first month in Japan. He came and watched me throw a bullpen, and he said, in the bullpen, you look, so relaxed and so calm. Like you stay in your. He called it, my box. Physically in a bullpen, my delivery was a little more calm. I wasn't flying off to the side so much. And everything was, kind of right where I needed it to be. And in a game, you're falling off to the side a little bit, and maybe you're trying to do too much. And whether he meant it, as in a physical standpoint or a mental standpoint, I kind of took it as both. Is that when I'm out there pitching, know your limits, do what you do best, and don't try to overthrow. Stay, keep your delivery in this little box. Don't come flying off the mound. if I stay on the mound in that little box there, there's if you give me a 10-foot rectangle and said stay in this when I'm pitching, keeps everything going towards the plate. It's a little more efficient, and then mentally, I don't throw 100, don't try to throw 100, or I don't have this pitch, but don't try to make anything better than it has to be. Just stay within yourself.
Absolutely. And, over there, obviously, I mean, I think it was literally like worked out. It was like 188 innings and 187 strikeouts or something like that your last year.
Yeah.
People don't realize what a big deal that is. They don't strike out in Japan. Like, you don't see guys going out and punching out 17 guys in a complete game like you'll occasionally see over here. That's a really big deal because, effectively they pride themselves on, on not striking out and playing that small ball. Did it help you a lot with respect to fielding your position, holding runners, things like that, knowing that a lot of those guys are going to try to slap a single, steal second, and sack bunt and score on a sack fly or something along those lines?
Yeah, I mean they're big runners in Japan. They like to run a lot, and they're quick. They bunt, they slash, they slap the ball around. You got to be there to you got to get over to cover first base a whole lot there, and they take the pitchers take some defense almost every day. Something you don't see here in the major leagues a whole lot. But PFPs on a very regular basis over there. So if you're not good at fielding, I think you get good at fielding.
Well, and that speaks to my next point is that, and I'm not sure if you even realize this, you rank second among National League pitchers in range factor, third in putouts, and fourth in assists. So, whether guys like doing PFPs or not, there's something to be said about fielding your position, holding runners, doing things like that to be successful at the highest level. Especially, you're not a guy that punches out 15 per nine. I think last year it was 6 or 7 and change, and so. You're pitching to contact a fair amount and need to leverage that ability to get ground balls, right?
Absolutely. And if you're in the zone getting weak contact, that's, you got to be ready to field your position. You're pitching in, you're pitching away out of the zone, a lot of soft tappers right back to you. You got to be on your toes.
Absolutely. All right. So kind of jumping forward to being back here in the States. Obviously, it was a breakout year last year in 2018. One of the things that I think is interesting about you is that you led all of Major League Baseball in first pitch strike percentage. It was 71% of your at-bats began with a first pitch strike. It's interesting. There was a Wall Street Journal article last year that talked about guys like Kyle Gibson, Patrick Corbin, who literally had career resurgences because they threw fewer strikes than ever. They threw a lot more basically balls that looked like strikes until the last second. What is the first pitch strike like? What's your perspective on it? What's the goal as you kind of start a hitter? Why does that matter so much for you?
Get ahead, stay ahead. All the computer models and everything doesn't take into account what a hitter thinks and how a hitter feels. All of a sudden a hitter's boop, strike one. Okay, well now I only have 2 left. Mm-hmm. I got to be a little aggressive. I can't let anything go. And a lot of times a hitter's first swing of the game, it's their first time seeing a ball off you. It was my first year in the league last year, so no one had really seen my first time in a while, and my look was a little different, so no one had seen me. So I probably knew that I could get away with some stuff. Maybe I'm not getting away with it now. Mm-hmm. Maybe want to be a little more, second time through the league here, maybe be a little more fine, first pitch.
Yep.
But, you look at percentages, you look at numbers, batted balls in play average. If you start throwing balls and get ball 4, guys on base every time you throw ball 4. Mm-hmm. Who leads the league in batting average on balls in play is like 3 something. Mm-hmm. So if I take the best guy and say, here's a strike somewhere, he's probably going to be out 7 out of 10 times, 6 out of 10 times. But if I throw ball 4, it's 100%.
Yeah, and what a lot of people don't realize is that same kind of mindset is what allows you to throw 200 innings when nobody throws 200 innings anymore. There are only 13 pitchers in baseball who hit the 200 inning mark last year. That was the lowest number in well over 100 years. I put up a tweet the other day. It was like only 13 pitchers made 33 starts in 2018, and even if you have 33 quality starts, that still leaves you 2 innings short of actually hitting that number. So if you're going to have a dud, you've got to cancel it out with a complete game. So for you, how much does that first pitch strike, just allow you to go deeper into games and save that bullpen?
Yeah, I mean, boom, you get strike one. All of a sudden, they're on their toes, and they got to, the hitter has to be a little more aggressive. And I throw a good pitch, 0-1, and get a ground ball. I mean, quick outs are the best outs. If I get a guy 0-2 and I really try to strike him out, and maybe I hang the 0-2 breaking ball, but he pops it up to center field, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. So when you first came up, pitch mix were you throwing both the 2-seam and the 4-seam when you were first drafted?
Yeah, I think I've always thrown that 2-seamer arm side. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to throw it a little more glove side, front hip, ride back. Mm-hmm. The more comfortable I get with it. But I've always been arm side just because that's really the only place I've been able to get consistent movement on it. Mm-hmm. Was that arm side heater and then the 4-seamer away.
So you had the 2-seam, the 4-seam, and the loopier curveball. Were you throwing a changeup when you first came out of college, or was that something that took time to refine?
I mean, I've always thrown it, but it's always my, least.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's my, yes, it's probably my worst pitch, but it's also the pitch I don't have a whole lot of confidence in because mm-hmm. It's something I've struggled with. The changeup, something I've struggled with forever.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting now that if you look at your pitch mix in 2018, 27% 4-seams, 22% 2-seams, 26% sliders, and 21% curveballs. It was just 4% changeups. But, these are all like interesting dynamics. Effectively, you have 4 pitches that you're confident in that you can command in just about any count.
Yeah.
And that's what makes a 200-inning starter in the big leagues. So let's have a little fun with it. If you had to pick a sound for your 4-seamer, what would it be?
Like that, when you put that piece of bacon right on the griddle for the first time, just like a nice sizzle, a nice low hiss.
What about the 2-seam?
More of like I've got this like a handsaw, like a little buzzsaw maybe, because I get a lot of broken bats. On the 2-seamer inside.
I like it. What about the slider?
The slider.
I'm only asking because we did this in the off season one day, and it was so entertaining that I have to share it with the world.
The slider would make like the like a car with its horn on going by, like like that maybe.
All right, and the big loopy curveball.
Like a.
And what about the changeup?
Like the Three Stooges, though.
This is incredible. All right, we'll have to do a sound draw on this for the highlight reel. So, all right, joking aside, let's talk about differentiating pitches. You throw a 2-seam and a 4-seam, and from a pure like analytical perspective, in terms of just numbers, they aren't massively different, right? So in 2018, your 4-seam was average at 91.4. It was like a 2309 spin rate. Your 2-seam was 93.5 at 2218. So velo and spin rates are relatively comparable, but they profile incredibly different in terms of action and how you use them. So, I guess the question for me is, is it trust the grip and let it rip, or do you have certain cues that you're telling yourself when you're throwing a 4-seam versus throwing a 2-seam?
When I'm throwing a 4-seam, I really want to make sure I stay behind it mm-hmm. and on top of it. And then when I'm throwing a 2-seam, I want to make sure I stay on top of it, but I also want to make sure that I stay on the inside of it just a little bit.
So you will change the cues a tiny bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the last thing I want to do, sometimes that 2-seamer, guys have a tendency, that ball will sometimes just cut erratically. Mm-hmm. If I don't stay where I need to stay on it.
Absolutely. So actually, you're facing Scherzer this time around, and one of Max's big lines is that you always want to learn one breaking ball before you learn two. Would you agree with that? Did having that really good feel for that loopier curveball, did it make it easier to learn that hard slider, or do you think that hard slider is just having really good arm speed and like trusting the grip and let it eat?
So how I found my slider is I took kind of my curveball grip. A little more, turned it a little bit in my hand as to be not like a straight curveball grip, but I would hold the curveball and I kind of told myself, okay, well, how I wanted to shape the curveball because I wanted like that hard, like tight downer curveball that didn't have a big loop in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, how late in my delivery can I turn the curveball? How late can I turn it and still get some action on it?
Mm-hmm.
And that ended up being, just turn it just a little bit at the very last second, and it's a slider.
There you go. So, are you consciously shaping that slider differently? Because I've seen it 90 and I've seen it 85 at times. Can you do different things with it yet? Or is it to you still just that throw the crap out of it, make it as hard as I can?
Depends on the day. If there's days where the feel doesn't seem as great, it's just kind of a grip it and rip it. I'm looking for one consistent ball flight. And then there's days I feel like I can shape it really well. That up and in cuttery type spin or that back foot kind of downer, a little more depth to it.
Absolutely. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the 5-day rotation. It's evolved over the course of time. Give me a little feel for what your 5-day rotation is, both in terms of training and throwing. So let's start with throwing. So you go out, you make a start on day 0. What does day 1, 2, 3, 4 look like leading into the next start?
Day 1 is probably no catch. If I find myself outside or during batting practice, I may make 20 throws. Hey, nothing's broken. Okay, shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't feel like there's a whole lot of need to throw after that.
Mm-hmm.
You throw 100 some odd pitches. What I need to throw more the next day? I mean, you run a Boston Marathon. Do the guys go out there and they go for a light jog afterwards?
I agree. Couldn't agree more. I think it's the least productive day of throwing for most guys.
Yeah.
And then day 2, what goes down?
Maybe get out to like 90, 120, stretch it out a little bit more, get my arm moving, get the arm speed back, rhythm and timing, but not too much. And then day 3 is a bullpen day.
Mm-hmm. Will you stretch it? Will you long toss before your pen? Stretch it out more?
I will stretch it out, get it going a little bit more. Just because, I want to get the arm speed going so it's there, and I'm not trying to force arm speed when I get on the mound for my breaking balls and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I want the arm speed to kind of be there, but at the same time not, I don't want to blow it out on the mound. I'll kind of, get a couple real good throws in long toss so I can have a little more feel on the mound, but I want that, that arm speed to be there at the end so it snaps.
Absolutely. And when you're doing those, how much will you do in terms of spinning your breaking balls, just playing catch? Will you wait until you get off the mound to work on it, or do you like to see the shape, or not so much shape, but the spin of them just playing catch?
Yeah. When you bring it back in short, I'll throw some breaking balls. Sometimes the guy wants to get down. I don't necessarily need him down. I just want to feel the ball, how it spins as it leaves my hand.
That's awesome. And then what about day 4 after you've thrown your pen? What are you doing the day before the start?
Light toss, maybe 90, 120, get a couple good licks in and then maybe come in and, a little bit of feel for spin and then take it in, get my couple light jogs in and I'm out.
And then what about the training side of things? How much are you lifting, sprinting, doing stuff between outings?
Big lift the day after.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. It's the day that I, if I want to lift heavy. If I'm upset, I can lift heavy weights, which is always fun. It feels good. And, depending on how my legs are feeling, sometimes it's, a nice 15-minute bike ride. They're big into the BFR here, so I do that every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
I do that stuff, but if the weather's nice outside, I really do like to I know it's old school and it apparently isn't even the best thing for you, but I like a nice 15, 20-minute jog. Go run around the stadium, run around the warning track, cruise the concourse, maybe get up to the top of a stadium, see the view.
Yep. Clear your
But
head a little bit.
Yeah, get a good playlist going.
There you
I
go.
like that.
And then so you have the day one lift. What about 2, 3, 4? What are you doing on those days?
I'll do some intermediate stuff there. Obviously like all my shoulder work, a lot of stretching. I will do a light lift on my bullpen day, mostly like single leg stuff, and then upper body stuff, lighter, but make sure I get through a real full range of motion.
Absolutely. And then are you just laying low on day 4 other than your catch play, or will you sprint or power shag or anything like that?
I'll shag, but not crazy shag. They'll recommend, hey, you're starting tomorrow, why don't you run like 10 light sprints? I'll make sure that I get after at least 10 fly balls.
Okay. All right. So changing gears now, you get to throw to one of the best catchers of all time. And, a lot of people listening on this are probably pitchers, coaches, parents, things like that. But there are definitely some catchers listening to this. What makes Yadier Molina so good? What is your experience with him? How has he helped you?
His physical attributes from a catching standpoint are a joke. I mean, his hands, he beats. You could cross him up and he'll beat your ball to the spot and frame it. Mm-hmm. It's an uncanny ability that probably him and not many others have. And then obviously his arm and how quick he is. So from a physical standpoint, obviously he's off the charts. But from a mental standpoint, once, it took me a while to even come close to his, type of awareness as he's calling the game. I think it started with, okay, he's calling a fastball and throw a fastball. He's calling a curveball and throw a curveball. It took me like probably almost half the season to be like, oh, okay, I see what he's doing here. Mm-hmm. Because his game awareness and, kind of how he recognizes the pace of the game and how hitters react to certain things, I think is what sets him apart big time from everybody else.
Absolutely. So what are, if you could give some advice to catchers out there to progress in the direction of Yadier Molina, what do you say to them? Is it just go out and receive a ton? Does he do a really good job of building rapport with his pitchers, of communicating with you and asking what you want, what you need, and what he sees? Or what are the things that you can tell the up and coming catchers on that front?
If you want to be like him, good luck. He does everything. He does everything well. Mm-hmm. Start with being extremely well-rounded and work extremely hard at everything. You see the work he puts in the video room. He's got nine or 10 gold gloves, couple platinum gloves, and he'll still be out there early every once in a while, throwing the bases, doing this, doing that, getting all his, just doing all his fundamental stuff in spring training. Spring training kind of, you see all the catchers, including Yadi, like back to the basics type stuff. Mm-hmm. Don't ever lose that foundation. What makes him great.
All right. So now we're going to go to the lightning round. So this is where you can kind of give the short responses to a collection of questions. So what advice would you give to a teenage Miles Mikolas?
Just stick with it. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to get upset, but stick with it. Keep your head down and keep working hard, and always make sure you're having fun out there. Because if you're not having fun out there, then there's no point being out there.
What about minor league Miles Mikolas?
Be a little more responsible.
That comes with parenting too. So
yeah, be a little more responsible. Don't ever blame an organization for your not moving up or not getting called up. If you don't like it, play better.
Absolutely. All right. I think I'm going to know your answer, but we've had a couple of different answers from the guys that we've had. What's more important, stuff or command?
Command.
All right. Favorite teammate of all time and why?
Of all time?
Yeah.
I'm going to upset so many people. My favorite teammate. Can I say my teammate in life? Can I say my wife? Can I do
Ooh,
that?
that's very well played, especially with Mother's Day coming up. You absolutely can say that. Lauren's a rock star.
Okay, yeah.
All twin moms, and we'll give a special shout out to RJ Alvarez as your fishing partner.
Yeah, I mean he's never been on my team. I've had some great friends over the years. I've got some great friends on my team right here. I mean our Wainwright's just an awesome guy. I spend a lot of time hanging out with John Gant, Waka, Wong. We're all going to see the Avengers in Chicago. We got a great group of guys here.
Nice.
Everyone on the team here is so nice. Coming up in San Diego, I'd say my two best buddies in San Diego were Andrew Kashner and Brad Brock when I was up in San Diego. Get to see Brad in Chicago, and Kashner's over in Baltimore right now.
All right.
Yeah, I mean,
you're a likable guy. You're like C-Shek. You make friends wherever you go. That's who you are.
When I was in Texas, I lived with Derek Holland. Derek Holland's a great guy. Awesome dude, super funny. I mean, you see him do the Harry Carey stuff. Yep. On TV. He's an awesome guy too.
People forget it's like it's such a small world in baseball. It's like the Kevin Bacon game for everybody, though. All right. So, favorite who do you like to watch? What pitchers will you actually sit down and watch, and why do you like to see them?
I mean, I get to watch one of them today. Watching Scherzer throw is always fun. I like it's fun to watch some of the guys on my team throw. It's fun to watch Hicks throw. I mean, he throws so hard, and Wayno's. We always see him thinking out there the way he pitches. Guys on another team like watching Scherzer throw. I mean, Kershaw's a given. I mean, he starts landing that big curveball, and watching guys kind of fight that thing is a lot of fun. So if it's a lefty, him or Rich Hill, guys with those big breaking balls are fun to watch.
Absolutely.
The big breaking ball is fun because you just see a lot of odd reactions from hitters. Guys get really frustrated with it. It's fun to see hitters get upset.
Absolutely. All right, so this is one. I'll give you my example, and you got to give me yours. The most annoying or overused thing people say to you when they find out that you have twins, because everyone wants to tell you about their friend who has twins. They want to ask you if twins run in your family, and then they always use the hackneyed expression "double trouble." What's the most annoying one that you've heard?
I mean, if we walk through the mall with the twins and then Lily, we're not sneaking around anywhere. We're pretty loud coming at you. But you get that, oh, you guys must be real busy.
No.
You must be busy. Oh, you have your hands full. You must have your hands full.
You know, the one I'm curious about, do you get the people that are like, oh, are they identical? And you have a boy and a girl? Have you gotten that much?
Yeah, I think that's just people that everyone wants every set of twins they see to be identical because they probably think it's like a neat thing.
Yeah. In reality, all parents of multiples want you to do is hold the door for us while we're pushing the double stroller. That's it.
Yeah. We're real busy. Hold the door for me. Let's go.
All right, that's all I've got for today. So, Miles, they can find you on Twitter. Solid Twitter game at Last One for Miles. And I bullied you into getting on Instagram this offseason. I'm actually really proud of myself. It's at Magic_Mikolas 39. This is a lot of fun, man. I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time, and go out and give him hell tonight.
Anytime. Glad to be on the show.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd be thrilled if you'd consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a review to read on iTunes. We welcome your suggestions for future guests and questions. Just email elitebaseballpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for your continued support, and we'll see you next episode.